Hi, this is Carrie, and welcome to Tandem Talks, a podcast meant to empower you to live your life your way.
And I'm Craig. Join us as we go deeper with entrepreneurs and their journey creating success in business and life. Welcome all to another episode of Tandem Talks. I'm here for a very special episode because we have Mr. Nathan Flood on the call with us, aka his code name, I think, in my brain is Sweet Tea, because he usually has a big Sweet Tea sign up behind him. So when I think of you, Nathan, I think of Sweet Tea. So that got me thinking maybe my logo needs to be bigger and like stranger so that I can work with people. He doesn't have that logo up today, but it's also a special episode because we are missing Carrie. She is engaged in other activities, so I get to roll solo. So hopefully I can keep our conversation flowing, but I believe with Nathan that will not be a challenge. To give him a light introduction, he's originally from Georgia, or is in the Georgia area, but he has quite the background in the military, has led several operations in combat, like active live over in Afghanistan. We appreciate your service to the country and the nation, of course. And doing that, he was also side hustling, learning how to web develop and all that good stuff. Went to college afterwards, got his four-year degree, and is now the co-founder of Hexalinks, and also the co-founder of STENCLD, that's STENCLD, and has actually built those companies combined to multi-million dollars in revenue, has many employees, has helped a lot of businesses because what his business Hexalink does is ultimately go in and consult and help them consolidate their technologies, their software applications, then also does a lot of training, has worked with some really large companies and some smaller size companies, does a lot of things for smaller companies for free, actually. So we appreciate that always, because that's a lot of the side hustlers that is our audience. But thank you for being with us today. Why don't you, if you can, just say a quick hello to the audience, and then maybe tell us a little bit about your early side hustling days and kind of how you got in the game of business ownership or entrepreneurship. So thanks again for being on.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, hello, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm glad y'all are tuning in. Side hustling's kind of always been my thing. Even having established businesses, I've always had little things going on the side. Because there's just opportunities out there, and I enjoy it. And sometimes I take on too much. Sometimes I don't have enough to keep my mind going. But as our companies have grown, my side hustling days are starting to get a little bit less and less as they were before. But I remember even starting out like my first attempt at college. I straight out of high school, I went to Georgia Southern, and I was there for about a year and some change. And the first thing I did was I started selling car audio out of my dorm room.
Selling car what?
Car audio.
Okay. Yeah.
Like big sound systems in your car. The little phone and stuff. Yeah. I found this book online, and this guy laid out all the distributors, and he laid out what you need to tell them and how to start your own little LLC and everything. So I did it. I rounded up. I actually sold half of my meal plans and paid for all the stuff to get that started. And then I just started selling.
Yeah, sorry, I got to interrupt that. So you sold some of your meal plans at school so that you had the money to fund the side hustle. I love it.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's not like I turned that into a great venture, but it just gave me that little extra money in college, because I hated the fact that I just was sitting in college watching money go out the window, and I was also just bored in college, to be honest with you. Like I was not ready to go to college when I was 18.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. But yeah, and then I left school. I went back to work for the family business. That was in the automotive industry. And then I just kind of rolled into the military there. And while I was in the military, my now wife, she was in Georgia. I was stationed up in New York at Fort Drum. And so I didn't really go out a lot. I'd go out with the guys and get a bite to eat, and I'd always be their DD. But I was mostly in my room trading stocks, or I was working on cybersecurity, web development, graphic design, you name it. Any freelance job, any company or organization that would let me do something, I would just do it. Or if anybody needed an assistant, I'd hop in, learn from them and stuff like that. I learned so much in 5 years. It was ridiculous. Even after I got out of the Army and went into contracting, I was still doing, while I was deployed to Afghanistan again, I was still doing that side hustle of getting freelance work and government work. At one point I was I was helping websites keep from having hackers hop in there to be activists. They hop in there and put up some type of activist type of subject on people's websites. And so I was like clearing that off and building websites and building computer systems and things of that nature. So I've just kind of always done it. It's just always just kind of gave me that little outlet, and the money's good and everything, but like it's always just that learning experience is what always driven me to do it.
Absolutely, that's great. And so I want to double back on that, but first let's sort of hear the next part of the story. So you get out of the military, you go back and you get your degree in IT. So you went and had that use the money obviously in your service. So then walk us through how you got to where you are now with multi-million dollars in revenue.
Sure. So the next steps kind of worked out like this. I left contracting, and being a defense contractor, you're still kind of in like this military environment. You're working for the military. You're on a military base. So like I finally got that lifestyle behind me, and I knew my first job was not going to work out because it's totally different. And I moved back to Georgia and I got this IT job, and the entire time there I was like resetting passwords, or hey, my Outlook's frozen, or whatever the case may be. Right? It was just dealing with people's email all day long, and it was just annoying. And my mind wasn't stimulated. And so I just started getting some feelers around and stuff. And again, started that side hustling, doing freelance work again. And then, I started looking at how this company was making money and everything. And I was just like, there's no reason why I need to sit here and work for what little bit I'm working for when I can just go do this on my own. And so then I just went and did it. And my whole goal in the beginning was like, all right, I'm going to be retired. I'm going to manage like 5 websites, and that's it. That's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I've learned over the years, and a lot of you've either learned it or you will, is when you start solving problems for people, the requests never stop, right? Like that's the reason why you can build a business, is because no matter what, if you're solving a problem, and then they say, hey, I've got this problem, can you solve it? And naturally, since I had basically covered the spectrum of everything digital technology, or I was at least smart enough to be able to figure it out, and I would tell them sometimes, be like, look, I've never done that before, but since you can't find anybody else, I'll give it a go. And so we just kind of worked through it. And I still do that today with new technology that comes out.
Right.
But, I just kept doing that, and it just kind of steambolled. And so next thing I knew, I had this business with doing graphics, doing video, doing web design, doing IT support, doing building systems, putting in ERPs, putting in productivity processes. And then, the more and more kept going, the more and more I had to do it. And then it just kept steamrolling. And so I eventually ended up being like a general contractor. I just had all these like subcontractors working for me. And that got up to a point where like there was a couple of summers where I'd have 70 different people working for me. And,
how many did you say?
70.
70. That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot of contractors.
Yeah, it is. To be fair, it's not like all of them were working full time. Sometimes a contractor would come in, do a quick little $2,000, automated process, if you will, or something. There's always different software applications that I had to train myself on. And now my total is like over 450 software platforms I'm well versed on. But, I had all these little contractors to like do the jobs, but I still had to like know enough to tell them what to do and everything.
Right.
And then from there, I just, I got to a point where I was like, all right, if I'm bringing in this type of business, and through that, I was starting to hit the 6-figure mark. That's when I was like, okay, this isn't just a side hustle. It's not just I'm making my personal salary and that's it. It could definitely be scaled. I just need to figure out a way to do it. And so I talked with my business partner, we met in the Army. We were in the same platoon together for a while, and he finally got out. He stayed in a little bit longer than me, and we just joined up. And late 2019, we got the ball rolling. We officially got everything put together in 2020, right as COVID was hitting. So that was fun. we just kind of steamrolled from there, to be honest with you. We took existing clients I had, we took new clients that we picked up, and the projects all of a sudden became bigger. It went from I'm doing a small project for a bigger project into we had the whole project. So we basically cut out the middleman and everything. And that's just kind of where we ended up. And that's where we are today. It's been fun. It's been a challenge for sure. Had to learn a lot of stuff. Talking to you the other day, we were talking about the challenges of banking when you start start doing big transfers. It's a big deal. So, but
banks don't like the over $10,000 game, man. You start wearing around a lot of money, they start asking questions for sure.
Yeah.
So, which is probably a good thing in most cases, right? So
it is definitely, yeah.
Well, no so doubt. you have just a really great success story that I think a lot of people would love to model, right? I mean, you didn't have to sell your home. You probably didn't second mortgage your house to get going, right? And so I think that there's a lot to be said for that. You just built a craft, you built a skill. And I mean, I really love what you said. When you solve people's problems, you'll be busy, right? Yeah, so then the question becomes, what are some maybe challenges or patterns that you've seen? Because you've worked with, as someone who's a general contractor, you got 70 different people that you're deploying, right? So you see them running probably side hustles, maybe front hustles, as we would call it. What are some challenges you've been through it yourself, bigger issues that side hustlers face that you think they're not able to overcome, that doesn't allow them to really build something into a real business? What holds folks back, do you think?
The big thing is time management. That's a huge one. A lot of people, when they first start, and especially this was really hard for me because there's so many things I can do them on.
Right.
And if it's the thing that I'm focused on at that time, I can generally do it faster than most people. Right. But the problem is when I'm having to do those 20 things in a day, then, the days are long. I mean, I'm already up at 2 a.m. every morning working already. So there's only so much time in the day. But that's the biggest thing I see. And when you start alleviating yourself, and it's hard to let go, I've been there. It's hard to think for yourself, like, I can do it for free and save money, or I can pay somebody.
Right.
And so then you got to get into, and there's that little thin line of where it's not worth it for it to be free anymore. You need to pay somebody, because you have to start looking at, and this is what the transition was when we started taking on big projects, and it was no longer, hey, I need to book 10 clients a month to get the bills paid as we were growing. It was more of, I need to book 10 a year, right? When we made that transition, then I started to realize that, like, okay, my time is way more valuable selling than it is me working, if that makes sense. Doing things like putting pitch decks together, building graphics, building websites, putting spreadsheets together for ERP, data migration, things of that nature. That's all stuff that we can have other people come in and do. And so you just have to kind of make little decisions here and there. And it's never pretty, it's like you said, you brought up a good point. There's some people that they take out a second mortgage, or they sell their home and downsize, or whatever the case may be. We didn't go that route. That was kind of one of the deals that me and my wife had. And I definitely try to keep personal finance out of the business as much as possible. But every once in a while, you got to bridge some gaps, right? So it comes up. But the big thing is just trying to make those little decisions that can help you save time so that you can put it toward the stuff that helps you make money. And most entrepreneurs, you're going to be the head salesperson. That's just life, when you're first starting out, especially when you're by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're the person who knows the process. You're the person who believes in it, whatever it is you're doing. You're the person that needs to be on the front line. So a lot of the back end or small stuff you can outsource. And I think, you're talking about outsourcing fairly expensive type things, but that's because you scaled to a point where you had big clients, right? And I think that's another takeaway is, if you're running a business and you want to scale it, one thing to think about is your client base, right? Like, can I scale up my client base? Because if you start to serve mid-sized $50 million businesses, or maybe $10 million businesses when you were serving $500,000 businesses, it's a great way to bump up your revenue, potentially your margin. Sometimes your margin shrinks, but you got more revenue. It depends on industry, right? So that's a really good point for, I think, people to be thinking about. I think if you have a consumer business, like you're selling to consumers, or maybe you have a coaching business, or like something along those lines, thinking about the quality of the person that you're working with too can sometimes really change your dynamic and your pricing. Because if you're trying to support college students, the budget's tiny. If you're supporting high-end professionals or business owners, then there's a lot more room to bill higher and have a higher level of revenue pretty quickly, and hopefully margin. So good. So then as you started scaling and you started adding people, right? And then you start adding costs that can create a little extra stress, because now you got some fixed costs you're managing too. And I know you're mostly working with people like staff and whatnot. You don't have a lot of other fixed costs. But talk to us just a little bit about how you managed through that as you started to actually hire employees and scale up a little bit. What did that look like? And what were some of your takeaways? What's maybe something you might do a little differently if you had to restart the process?
Doing things differently, I would have let go of stuff a lot sooner.
What do you mean by that?
So like me personally, like I love doing the business development. I like selling and all that, but I still miss like building stuff. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But the thing is like when you're building these systems and stuff, it's such a time consuming thing. It's so detail oriented, Data migration is not a small thing, lining things up and stuff like that. That's all just very detail oriented. So handing off projects I should have did a little bit more of an abrupt handoff to employees as I brought them on, instead of a spoon fed approach like I was doing. But we were just in the middle of projects and starting some big ones and things like that. And so that was the big difference I should have done. But the way we kind of did it is I started looking at my day, and this will kind of go back to when you're that solo entrepreneur and you're doing that side hustle, how you need to work at stuff as well. I used to have my day mapped out from 2 a.m. until 8 p.m. Right. And it would be everything that I was going to do broken into, if it's hopping on social media to message people like through LinkedIn Sales Navigator, or just on LinkedIn period, because it's where we get a lot of our business from. If that's 15 minutes every hour on one day, that's what I had lined up. If it's doing cold calls for 30 minutes or to an hour, I had that lined up. Working on projects, checking on support tickets, checking in with contractors, that's all mapped out on my day. And so what I started to do was I started to look at, okay, what can I realistically get rid of off my plate at a cost-effective rate for the business, right?
Right.
You can't just go out willy-nilly and say, well, I'm going to go get the best people, or I'm going to get the cheapest people. It doesn't necessarily work that way. You got to try to find that middle ground of getting the most out of people that are looking to grow with you. And that was the best thing that we've done so far, was we identified employees at larger corporations that had the skills we were looking for. And they're not disgruntled, but they when you're working for those big companies, and you know about this, you kind of get lost in the sauce, right? Like you end up, you're getting the busy work. You're not really in on the projects all that much. You're not really making decisions. You're just there working.
Yeah, you have a very narrow scope of work typically. And then that narrow scope of work you become good at. And a lot of times it just becomes redundant and similar. And then it's not really challenging all of your different talents and abilities, right? So I think there becomes this level of apathy almost that kicks in at some point, right? And frustration, because you can't, I could do this project better, but I don't have any control over this vertical or whatever, right? So yeah, there becomes sort of this boxed in feeling, I would almost say, right? I mean, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we find these people, and a lot of times it was where I would do something with the company that they were working for.
Sure,
there's a lot of big, large companies I've done work for, because all big companies hire contractors. There's just little things that come up that you don't need people full time for, but you just gotta get it done. And so I'd work with these people on these projects, and I would just start talking to them about stuff, and they'd be like, "Man, I would love to come over and lead a project. Here I'm on a 6-year wait list until I get to that point," kind of thing. And, but, me and my business partner, we've just been recognizing talent as we go and bringing people on, as we could afford it, but also as they could bring a lot of value. First off, being our systems administrator, he's a guy that he done freelance work with me as a side hustle for a couple of years. And then I was just like, he was talking about, he was tired of doing the busy work at the big corporation he was at. And I was like, well, let's talk about you coming over here and what that looks like. And we created a plan 6 months ahead of time, to be honest with you. That way we had time for the business to look at, okay, how much do we need to fund his salary?
That's great.
Yeah. And so that's just kind of how we've done it. It hasn't been a perfect plan. There's been some tight months here and there, especially our sales process is long. 6 to 12 months long. So, toward the end of that process, when we're waiting for those budget committees to release funds for the new fiscal year, things get lean, and that's just life. Yeah. But that's just how you got to do it. And you just got to weigh that. How much value the big thing is, a lot of people don't look at it. They go hire people just to hire them to get stuff off their plate, or they just don't hire people because they think they can't afford it. But when you really look at like, how much money can this person save if they come on board? Like, yes, they'll cost a salary, but like, how much revenue can they generate? How much time can they save? And time is money, all day long. And you just have to weigh those pros and cons and see what'll work out, and then just take that leap. I was very hesitant of bringing on full-time people, because with contractors, it works out great. You don't have to pay them till you need them, right?
Absolutely.
And so that was a big decision for us to bring on employees, but we needed to control the time they were spending on work a little bit more, because we needed, like, we're getting larger companies that need support all the time. They can't wait a day or 4 hours or whatever for support.
Yeah. And I think you were in a really good space. And I think people don't deploy this enough, is like having those contractors. I think it's become more common, especially in recent years in COVID times, but man, contractors are a really great way to help you bridge a gap for said period of time. You don't have all the commitment. You don't have the overhead. You don't have the responsibility, right, of making sure their family can eat because of like the revenue you're bringing in. And it's easier to depart if the relationship's not working. So contractors are a great way to go to a certain point when you really need some dedicated resources. One thing I've seen companies do that I think is really cool is offer equity, or like stock options essentially, or micro equity, right? Where you can say to people, and you may or may not have done this, but you can say to somebody, hey, you can have 0.5% of the firm if after X years, and you can invest it however you want if certain margins, certain targets get hit. And that's a really great way to get them more engaged, because you said we wanted to bring on people that wanted to grow with us. And again, you don't have to. You could throw out a bonus based off revenue versus ownership, but there's a lot of really cool ways to structure things so that their goals are tied with yours, and then you're moving in that direction together. And you can do that with contractors as well. And that's been effective for some of the businesses that I've had in my banking clientele, or now I've consulted for and whatnot. Cool. So many different arenas we could go right now, but one area I do want to ping on a bit is work ethic. And you said this the other day, 2 a.m. to 8 p.m., I think what you said was your work day, which I'm sure is not every day, 100% of the time, but it goes to insinuating the level of intensity and work that you put in to truly grow, to build $1 million plus $2 million business. Like, that's not a joke. And I think sometimes people have these side hustles. They want to scale to several million in revenue, or at least replace their job income. And it's like, you gotta hustle. And I just see a lot of people like, well, I need that weekend off, or I can't, I've taken this vacation. It's okay. You can do it. But like, man, there's a certain level of intensity that I think some people lack right now, that it's almost like they feel privileged to it, right? Like they feel like they deserve it. It's like, I deserve this. It's like, when we were when I had my regular career and then building our side hustles to several million in revenue, even in like the direct sales or independent franchising like space, we worked like 100-hour work weeks. I mean, it was just like nobody asked, like, did you take time off? Now, I was in my 20s. I didn't have kids. Like, what else was I going to do? Like you, I didn't want to party, right? But can you speak a little bit to that work ethic and maybe how that helps or disempowers people? So probably you've seen some interesting things with vendors and whatnot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about work, and you're correct, that 2 a.m. to 8 p.m., that is just like, it's not every day. It's most days, but it's not every day. The 8 p.m. is mainly when I have to take calls in different time zones. When I gotta, if somebody needs to meet at 4 p.m. their time and they're in California, hey, I'll meet with them after dinner, not a problem. But yeah, the funny thing is, like, you look on social media and everybody is like, the people that give you the real stories. Like I love listening to Mark Cuban, because he'll tell you, he used to borrow from Peter to pay Paul all the time. He had to decide, like, do I want my power on this month or do I want my water on? How much ramen am I going to eat? That's real life, working through stuff, and him working all the time, quitting school, stuff like that. That's, you gotta figure out what you can give up and what you can't, Right. And some people, you got to decide what your side hustle wants to be. If you want it to just give you an extra $1,000 a month, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what. So
exactly, and you don't need to work crazy hours. You really probably don't. You just slowly build it up. Yep. Exactly.
But like if you're wanting to hit that $1 million mark, hey, ain't nobody gonna help you out there. You know what I mean? Like you gotta work, and you gotta push every day, and you gotta get out there and you gotta talk to people. Like, you're not gonna be able to sit there, like all those little coaching courses that come up and things like that. And they talk about creating this funnel and that funnel and doing all this. Those are tools that you can use, but you got to get out there and get people to come into them. The sitting back and waiting for the world to come to you is not going to happen, because someone like you and I is going to go over there and beat you to the punch every time, because we're willing to work and you're not. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to create leverage, but in the end, you got to be out there hustling. So the work that you do is pretty fascinating, because you can help big companies, obviously. And a lot of what you do is represent Microsoft and all their programs and tools, because a lot of people have a lot of Microsoft tools. They don't even know how to use them, or they're not using them effectively. So a lot of times what you can do is help companies consolidate their software. But you've shared a few things just in the few times we've chatted about things you've done for small business, or things you might recommend. So for the solopreneur, maybe they have one or two independent contractors, they've got some things rolling. What are some, like, maybe little software hacks or like little tricks from your business, more your deep expertise? Like, what would you recommend to people to watch out for or do?
The number one thing people do when they're choosing software or any type of tool is they go on Google and they search when they have a problem, right? Like, hey, I need to pay invoices, or hey, I need to create slide presentations, or I need to create graphics or whatever, right? And so they go on Google and they do a search, and there's nothing wrong with that. How do you think I learned? But the problem is when you go into Google or Facebook or whatever, or, once you go into one, it shows up everywhere, because that's the way it is. You start seeing all these ads that show you, hey, my software solves this distinct problem that you have, right? So then you start adding software by the problem, not software as an infrastructure. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's actually pretty deep. Okay, go ahead.
So what happens is you got all these people, and we see it every company that we take on. They'll have 70 software applications made by 70 different developers, right? That's not uncommon. And the thing is like, and a perfect example of this is we used to use when we used to set up Shopify websites for people, right? In my early days, MailChimp was huge for us because it integrated seamlessly. It was perfect. It's great. It's wonderful. It's whatever, and it gave us both easy stuff. But as I learned, and this is kind of what drove me into getting into core systems rather than just putting, ad hoc systems together, was MailChimp eventually dropped Shopify because they decided to build their own e-commerce platform. Their whole, they give you everything in one spot, right? And so when they did that, that disrupted a ton of stuff we had set up. So we had to go around and changing things. And so to prevent that, you want to look at systems that give you the most in one place, if that makes sense. So you kind of want to create this unified ecosystem. Will you be able to cover everything with one company? No, but you can get most of it. And so Microsoft 365, for example, you get the premium version. It's $20 a user per month. So whether you're a solo entrepreneur or you can have 5 or 10 people,
it's priced accordingly. Yep,
it's priced accordingly. Early next year it's going up to $22, but the $22 is nothing. I'm going to show you why. Right now people use Calendly a lot.
Yeah,
that's one application. Nothing wrong with that app. It's just a standalone app. There's nothing else that goes with it. You got to integrate it with other stuff. Microsoft 365 has the bookings app.
Yep.
Now, Calendly's not expensive. You can get it for anywhere between $5 and $15, if I remember correctly. But when you look at that, just Calendly by itself or any other application that you have, if it at least costs $5 a user and Microsoft 365 already got an app for that, already built into the subscription, you're looking at 20% of or 25% of the cost already being added to it. You could reduce your cost by 25% by taking that app away.
Yep.
Or you're going to increase it by 25% just for adding that one app for each person. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
Makes perfect sense. And then also if you're using bookings, it syncs better with your current technology if you're already using Microsoft Outlook or whatever else, right?
It does. It's actually built on. So the great thing about Microsoft's software is it's all built on the same platform essentially.
Right.
That's why it all works together so seamlessly. If you look when you get into the ribbons and stuff, like some of the functions are different, but for the most part they're the same. And Bookings app it's basically a built-on extension to Outlook.
Right.
And you can set it up a company page. You can set up individuals. You can set up different calendars. So like we can set up we've got an internal calendar set up so that people can book time with people that way very easily. And then we've got an external one for all of our clients. And then we're building another internal one for existing clients to book time with us. And so you can do all those types of things. And, Calendly's got a lot of functionality. I'm not trying to bash Calendly whatsoever.
Right.
It's just simply looking at when you're first starting out or even as you scale, making little decisions like that can have big changes for you, both financially and productivity wise.
Absolutely. So I think that is just a little microcosm hack on what Nathan and his company can do. Of course, you do that at scale for, I know, up to three to 4 to 5,000 person companies, if not bigger, right? So wonderful. I really appreciate you giving us a specific example and an actual hack that I think people can take away. So thanks for being with us. I believe you and I could probably go on and on and on and on, but for sake of the listener and for sake of both our productivity, we should probably pivot with our day. But where can people find you? Who's kind of your optimal client, and then we'll close her out today.
Sure thing. Also, the best place to find me is just hit me up on LinkedIn. Look up Nate Flood. You'll find me. Message me on there. I love talking to people, and we help a lot of solo entrepreneurs out with free advice, free support sometimes, things of that nature. It really just depends on the deal. But I love helping people move forward so they can start that scaling time. Our ideal client is typically 50 to about 5,000 users. That's a big scale. That's a big range there, but there's some 50-person companies that they may be doing $30 million in revenue. So it really just depends on, we're looking for people who either our typical, proposals come in like, or requests for proposals come in like this. Hey, I need to save X amount of dollars to get myself out of the red every month. Can you help me do that? And absolutely we can. There's a lot of stuff we can do. For example, going back to that Microsoft 365 deal, we helped somebody realize that they were already paying for Microsoft 365, but they could get rid of all those third-party apps, that they had going on. And they started saving $10K a month. And that was just from a consultation. We didn't really have to do anything.
Yeah.
But then the other side of the spectrum is if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to scale, you don't know how to do it. If you've been running all these different applications and you're doing all this manual data entry and stuff, now's the perfect time to hit us up and let us at least educate you on what's out there. And even if you don't go with us, you at least can go to other managed service providers and find out make an informed decision, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the thanks for going a little more specific there. One of the things that, Carrie and I are big fans of is using business as a tool to create a magical life, right? Yeah. And all the stuff that you're talking about is going to make your life easier as a business owner. And you can ultimately be more productive and do whatever you want, whether that's grow your business faster, support your team better, or whether it's spend more time with your family, right? And so I'm a big fan of that approach and that efficiency. And obviously, I think some of the companies that I have been involved with probably have some good synergy with what you do. And looking forward to helping each other out, hopefully, as the years progress and your growth continues. We wish you the best. Thanks for tuning in today. Definitely some key nuggets there I'm sure you all got from Nathan. And no matter what, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing right now, make sure you are enjoying the grind. Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to today's episode.
Please subscribe and leave a review, and be sure to visit tandemconsulting.co/talks.